Good morning and welcome everybody to the next episode of the Smart Snippets for Synthetic Sports Turf. Joining me today, I have Jared Hill, Director of SportEng, who we do all of our work with on synthetic sports surfaces. Jared, how are you going?
Morning, Martin. Yes, good. I mean, the COVID's been lifted from here, so it's a great time to be getting out and about.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully it stays that way over the rest of the year and next year. Now, today we're joining and talking about project management and the importance of critical hold points and that type of things once a contract is awarded. So maybe we start we start at the beginning. A contract is awarded normally by a local council. It goes through council. It then comes back to the officers, and they say, right, we've got so much enthusiasm, let's get going. So the first thing we always recommend is that you get all parties together. You actually fine-tune, sign the contract, and when it then comes to doing the work, there are normally a project management chart that gets developed. We ask to see it as part of the tender submission so that the council understands what they've got to do. As part of the Smart Connection and SportEng, in our specs, we actually have a checklist that we put together so that clients know what they have to do once the contract is signed. Now, some of those is making sure that the colours are right, that the design is right. We actually ask for the successful contractor to do a survey themselves to validate the designs, especially if it's a D&C, which normally has schematic designs or a design finalisation, and we do that side of it. The contractors need to put the order in for the yarn and the carpet to be made, which normally takes about 12 weeks, especially if it's been shipped from overseas. And then we look at the civil engineering side. So Jared, that clearly falls into your area. So within the project management side for the civils, what are the type of things that you'll be looking for?
Yeah, outside of some of the project management ones around traffic control and some of the sedimentation management, I guess the things that we're critical, we see as critical is what we call hold point documentation reviews and witness inspections, and ensuring that they are followed throughout the whole project, and they're usually broken down from the demolition and bulk earthwork stage and working all your way through as you come out of the ground. Or there's some key things along the way that from a quality perspective quality assurance perspective that needs to be adhered to. So as it's alluded to, whole point documentation reviews, we view them as documents of verification either on materials being brought to site or compaction tests being done by independent third parties, verifying that the works or the materials they're bringing to site are in compliance with the design documents. So doing that checklist, so coming out of the ground, ensuring the subgrade's been adequately compacted. The contractor engages a third-party geotechnical engineer to undertake compaction tests. That documentation is then provided as a whole point review, and that document is reviewed and signed off and continuing through. So that's your whole point documentation, so verification that things have been done that necessarily aren't cited but are being verified. The other ones are witness inspections, where they are witnessed by the superintendent's representative, whether that's been the consultants on the project or the PM involved. So again, they're things that are visually confirming works that are being done. That's very hard to quantify in written form, if you like. So something like a proof roll, for example, you can get that independently certified by a geotechnical engineer or overseen by the project engineer. So again, a witness inspection is signing off visually that the things that are being undertaken on site are in accordance with the specification or the sport governing body requirements.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point there. And I know that in our tender schedules, we actually provide along the FIFA guidelines what the methodology is going to be. So step by step of how they're going to deliver the project on site. So I think it's really critical that within there are the critical hold points, the witness points, as you say, to make sure that that works. I like the fact that at the beginning you talked about the documentation, like the quality assurance plan, the traffic management plan, sediment control. All of that area should really be signed off by the council before the project really starts on site, so that there's clarity of roles and responsibility between all parties. And once the civil engineering's done, they'll then start laying the surface, both the shock or drainage cell if it's horizontal drainage, the shock pad, and then the grass carpet with the infill. And I always think that it's really important that the minimum infill is actually topped up to the maximum so that it can settle, because what we've got to do is make sure that when we do the certification that people have actually played on the field for 3 or 4 weeks, so the infill just gets compacted a little bit down to the levels. And it's important that the contractor does that before the FIFA Institute comes in and tests it.
Yeah, no, definitely. That whole quality assurance process is getting to that final point, which is getting that FIFA certification. Like, everything we're doing is to ensure that when it's ready, when the infill has settled and is ready to get signed off by FIFA, there's no surprises. Because FIFA do ask the contractors now to verify certain elements of the construction, and they need to provide their quality assurance documentation. So it's imperative that that information is created or produced throughout the project, because it's very hard to retrofit or retrospectively test something that once it's already covered.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing as well that we should never forget is the importance of the maintenance after the field has been laid and installed. And I think that many people just think the contractor's going to do it and that's their responsibility. And we've talked about maintenance and other smart snippets before. But I think the important thing here is that at handover, you get a manual as part of the quality assurance from the tenderer, or the contractor rather, to make sure that the maintenance is going to get delivered. So within the operational manual you'll get provided at the end, there should be everything you need to know about the maintenance, all of the as-built drawings, all of the certification. Is there any other aspects that you'd expect to see in that final documentation delivered to the client, Jared?
No, I think that's it. I mean, as-built along the way are a critical one from an engineering perspective, understanding where the assets are in the ground, because once they're in the ground, it's very hard to identify where they are. So, again, following that whole QA process, there should be a folder that's created by the contractor, that either digitally or hard copy, that can be handed over at the end of the project, that pretty much shows anyone who comes 5 years later, 10 years later, how it was built, how it was built really. So there's no, if they need to fix something, or if they need to retrofit an element, they want to put additional goal sockets in for another sport, that they know where everything in the ground is and there's no surprises. So again, if you follow a stringent QA process, that documentation's there, that anyone later down the path can go, okay, yep, I know where it is. This should be pretty straightforward, or it's not straightforward, but I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that this goes back to the project management is critical for the client to be involved in. Just because the tender is awarded, even if it's a D&C, they still need to be involved at the critical steps.
Yeah, and councils have a huge role in this. Sometimes I've seen certain clients get, they see a synthetic project and they get a bit scared and go, this is something I'm not really familiar with, and they leave it totally in the contractor's hands, which is 9 times out of 10 is fine. But a lot of what we're doing is typical civil engineering principles. A synthetic pitch is a glorified road, really. You've still got your compacted layering, you've got your edge strip that holds it all in place. The only difference is you're putting a synthetic grass over it. So a lot of council engineers can actually be involved in that QA process and actually understand certain elements of it. They don't have to be afraid. There are specialist elements of it, but there is a hand in glove there between the consultant and the council PM, that they can share the load.
Yeah, and obviously if they learn on the first synthetic, they'll feel more comfortable on the second or third, which is the way that we've worked with many clients, isn't it?
Yeah, and you become that trusted point of contact. You don't need to be there 24/7 holding the hand. They develop confidence, and they learn. You don't want them to be too confident that they think they know everything, because that's sometimes a double-edged sword. But just so that they don't get spooked when a contractor comes and tries to pull the wool over them and claim a variation, when they might be able to stand on their own 2 feet and argue the point back.
Yeah, I agree. Well, listen, Jared, thanks very much for sharing your insights again. Really appreciate it, and hope this has been helpful and useful for the industry. Thanks, mate.
No worries. Thank you, Martin. Thanks for having me.